on Saturday night. On Saturday night, the Jewish people will be observing the holiday of Purim. So we're going to discuss tonight a little bit about this holiday of Purim and something fascinating, really, that will give us an insight into the nature of the Jewish people and the secret of our longevity, if you will. Okay, we're going to begin with a fascinating discussion that happened after the Second Temple was destroyed. So we're talking about 1900 years ago. And the story happened with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his students. A conversation that happened, that must have happened in the yeshiva. So you have it on your papers. The Talmud is from Tractate Megillah, page 12a. Shalu Talmidav Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's students asked him the following question: Why were the Jews of that generation sentenced to destruction? In other words, the question is as follows. There's an underlying premise here, which is that if the Jewish people were destined for extermination, it must be that God allowed for this to happen. It was ordained by God. How could it be that God would allow such a thing to happen to the Jewish people? Now, just to give you a little bit of context over here, when we celebrate Purim, it's a unique celebration because it's not the only time in our history where someone rose to power and wanted to hurt the Jews, to expel the Jews, to kill the Jews even. But it's the only time where all of the Jewish people lived under one rulership. It wasn't in one small place. It spanned all the way from Turkey, all the way maybe to China. It was a big. It was
Kush.
Yeah, until Kush.
Africa to India, right? I think that's the island.
Hodu is Turkey. Hodu.
Hodu is
India.
Like East Indian.
Achashverosh was in Iran.
Yeah.
The story of Purim happened over there, but it was talking about geographically. It was a big space. But in the words of the Megillah, it was 127 provinces, 127 states that he was the ruler over. So all the Jews lived there. And when Haman came up with the plot to exterminate the Jews, it was every Jewish man, woman, and child, and to be done in one single day. So there's a target put on everyone's back that told the non-Jews, you have free reign. It has become legal. It's legal to kill the Jews. On this day, it's legal to kill the Jews, and they are, according to the law, not allowed to defend themselves. What do you do now? This was the extent of the weight that was on the Jewish people for a period of time because of this decree. And the miracle is when the Jewish people, that decree was never rescinded. The decree of Haman, because we read in the Megillah, once Achashverosh tells Esther, once a law goes out signed with the signature of the king, it cannot be retracted. At best, what we can do is we can say now that the Jews could defend themselves. So that's what happened. The Jews had to fight for themselves on that day. So the smart ones realized that Esther and Mordechai are now in charge, and the king Achashverosh flipped, and now he became a friend of the Jewish people. So they didn't mess with the Jews. Why would you? It's a bad investment. But there were still some haters that are just going to be haters. So tens of thousands of people started up with the Jews, and we were able to defend ourselves, and we defeated and we killed tens of thousands of people. This is the magnitude of the decree of Haman. Every single Jewish man, woman, and child to be exterminated in one single day. Asks the students of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, what did they do so wrong that they deserve this? Right? What did the Jews do to deserve this? So in very untraditional, I think it's maybe the only time in the Talmud where we find such a response, where he answers them. He says, Imru atem, you tell me, what do you think, guys? The students ask the teacher, and the teacher, nowadays, maybe it's more common, but in the Talmud, we don't find this. You ask the question, you give an answer. This wasn't a different type of a setting. This was rear. What do you think, guys? So they tell him, because they enjoyed the feast of the wicked man Achashverosh. So he replies to them, if so, those that lived in the capital city who took part in the feast, they should be killed. But all the Jews around the world, what did they do wrong? Because the people in Washington, D.C. sinned, so everyone in America now has to be in trouble? That can't be. So he goes and he offers a different explanation, and he says, it must be because everyone bowed down, everyone worshipped idols. Everyone did, as the Gemara says, except for Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah. And therefore, everybody was included in this decree. What we're going to focus on today is this answer that the students gave. Because in Jewish literature, especially in the Talmud, where you have many questions and many answers, the question is also a part of Torah, and the question has to make sense. The answer is part of Torah, even if the answer is later refuted, it has to make sense. We're not just throwing darts at a board, seeing where they land. Everything has to have. That's why it was recorded in the Talmud. When we make a blessing to study Torah, you can make a blessing even to study a section in Torah, an answer in Torah, which is refuted later on. It's also still part of Torah. It's part of the Jewish literature forever. So we have like this. Why were the Jewish people destined to be exterminated? So they said because they participated, they enjoyed participating in the feast of Achashverosh, in the wicked man's feast. So now, this needs to be understood, because in their minds, it made sense for them. How could this make sense? How could this answer make sense to the students of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? What's the problem with the answer? The problem with the answer is two things. Number one, at face value, we understand this answer to be, well, they didn't keep kosher. The non-Jewish king threw a party. He must have been serving non-kosher food. Everybody came there. It was probably very good food, I would imagine. The king throws a party. It's very good food. And they were tempted by it, and they ate it. So everyone ate not kosher. And that's why the students would say that they deserve to be exterminated. The problem is we don't find anywhere that you get a death penalty for eating not kosher food. That's not the punishment for eating not kosher. So even if we would accept this at face value, that's why, that was the sin, so to speak, the sin was eating non-kosher, well, the punishment isn't commensurate with the sin. That's the first issue over here. But we have a much bigger problem than that even, and that is, it seems from the sources that Achashverosh did serve kosher. He actually served them kosher food at this feast. There was a kosher menu. For those that wanted, there was kosher food. So there's no reason to assume that they even ate non-kosher. And we'll see, where do we see this from? So if we give a look at the second piece over here on this paper, this is the opening of the words of Esther. We read this is the Megillah of Esther. This is what we read on Purim, what we call the Megillah. This is what we read. By Hivme Achashverosh, happened in the days of Achashverosh. He was the Achashverosh who ruled from Hoidun until Cush. Sheba Vesrmei Medina. He had 127 provinces. He transited from India to Nubia. Where's Nubia? Sudan?
Well, I mean, the Ethiopian Jews claim to be Jews and they're from Ethiopia, so
Okay.
Cush is Ethiopia because Ethiopians came from there.
Okay, fine.
That's my mom.
So yeah, from India all the way to the middle of Africa. In those days, when the king was occupying the royal throne in the capital city of Shushan, in the 3rd year of his kingship, he made a festive feast for all of his Sardav va'avadav, all of his governors and all of his nobles. So he makes a big party for all of the elite, so to speak, right? But then, if you jump to verse number 5, after this feast is over, well, actually, the feast lasted for 120 days for the elites. The king made a banquet for 7 days in the court of the king's palace garden. For who? For all the people who lived in the Shushan capital, high and low alike. This was, everyone is invited. The king is inviting everyone from the capital city to a 7-day party going to be hosted in one of his palaces. The Jewish people, as residents of the capital city, the king invites you. You get an invitation to the White House. It's not respectful to turn it down. It's a disrespect. Even if you don't like the president, even if you don't like his policies, there's still the office. He's still the president. He's still the ruler. Certainly, if he's a king, you don't want to tell a king, "I'm sorry, but I don't accept your invitation." So the Jewish people accepted the invitation. But if you read further, you see, what did he serve them? So you read in verses 6, 7, and 8, right? And specifically, we'll jump to verse number 8. And the rule for the drinking was no restrictions. For the king had given orders to every palace steward to comply with each man's wishes. See something fascinating. Every man's, in other words, it's not like there was forced drinking here. Not only that, but according to each man's wishes means that if somebody wanted kosher wine, what was the rule that the king made? The Talmud says, you see from the verse here, that if somebody wanted kosher wine, so then they had an option for kosher, because the king wanted everybody in the capital city to be happy. He wanted to serve vegetarians, got vegetarian, the meat lovers got steak, and the people that wanted kosher, there was a kosher menu for them too. As the Talmud says, these words, ish v'ish, every man in Hebrew, it's ish v'ish. This refers to one man as Mordechai and one man as Haman. Those that follow Mordechai had a menu for Mordechai, and those that followed Haman had a menu for Haman. So let's get back now to our original question. If the Jewish people ate kosher food because Achashverosh offered them kosher food, so then what are the students offering as an explanation? As a possible explanation, the fact that they enjoyed eating from the meal. Really? They ate kosher? So again, the answer has to make sense. What were they trying to offer? How did they understand their answer to this question? Okay. So there's a possible explanation that goes as follows. And for this, you have to have a little bit of history. The first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. The king of Babylonia, his name was Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar came and he destroyed the first temple, and he exiled all the Jews from Israel, from Jerusalem. He brought them with him to Babylonia. He took all of the rabbis, all of the prophets, all of the sages, and he brought them all to Babylonia. He basically left Jerusalem with a few Jews with no Jewish infrastructure whatsoever. And that's when the seed of Jewish study moved out of Israel and actually remained out of Israel till today. Because even when the Jews went back to Jerusalem, rebuilt the temple, there remained a Jewish community, a very big, massive, large Jewish community in the diaspora outside of Israel, in Babylonia. Now, the prophet Yirmiyahu said before the destruction of the first temple that there's going to be an exile. He prophesied, he told the Jews what was going to happen. And he said that it would last for 70 years. It would be a 70-year exile, and then the Jews would return back to Jerusalem. So everyone knew about this prophecy. The Jews certainly knew it. The non-Jews also knew about this prophecy. Nebuchadnezzar dies, and 50 years later, Nebuchadnezzar's grandson is a ruler. His name is Belshazzar. Belshazzar, as kings are wont to do. They like throwing parties, and at parties they like drinking a lot with their friends. So Belshazzar makes a party. He throws a grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, who's now the king. He makes a big party for his friends.
This is in
Yeah.
Iraq today.
Yeah. Well, the border is not exactly Iraq, but somewhere between Iraq and Iran, that region of the world. Yeah. And at this party, he gets very drunk, and somehow he decides, he comes up in his state of drunkenness. He decides that the 70-year prophecy, the prophecy of 70-year exile, according to, he made a calculation or a miscalculation that it was over. And this would mean that the Babylonian Empire would rule forever and the Jews were never coming back. Because like I said, the non-Jews also heard of this prophecy. So if the 70 years were up, that would mean that all the Jewish prophecies were a joke. They were all one big lie. And therefore, we are going to live forever. Our kingdom will live forever. So what did he do? At this party, he comes up with this idea. I don't know exactly how it got into his head, but he came up with a calculation how, in his mind, it was 70 years. So he orders at that moment, he orders his servants to take out all of the vessels of the temple that they had looted when they destroyed the temple. They came and they took all the gold, all of our holy items from the temple. They had taken with them to Babylonia.
The locals also.
Huh?
And the locals.
No, they didn't have. That was hidden before. No. And he said, listen, why not? Until now, people were hesitating. You don't want to mess with the Jewish God. There's a prophecy that they're going to come back. You don't want to touch that stuff. It's holy stuff. But now that the 70 years are up and you see nothing happen and we're parting, so bring out the goods. So he starts flaunting the Jewish items that his grandfather basically stole. And at this party, he sees a hand. He sees a vision of a hand writing on the wall, but the wall of the hall where this is taking place. And the handwriting says 4 words. So the handwriting had 4 words. I believe it was four words that were written on the wall, and they didn't know. No one knew what these words meant. No one has any idea what these words mean. He's freaked out, and the only thing they could come up with is to call Daniel. Daniel was an advisor to his grandfather. Daniel the prophet was an advisor to Nebuchadnezzar. So they call in Daniel to read the words and tell him what it means. He was, yeah. So Daniel reads the words and he tells them, I believe the words in English, it was wade, and something is going to split. And Daniel explains to them that God weighed your reign, and he's going to split and take away the kingdom from you, something like that. So Belshazzar, who knew already that Daniel is a real legitimate prophet, he goes into panic mode, and he orders his guards to shut down the doors of the palace. No one is permitted to enter the palace, and even if they say they're king, anyone tries to get in, should kill him on the spot. It doesn't matter what type of an excuse. There's no one invited. It doesn't matter what they say. And Belshazzar goes to bed that night. He's having a little of a hangover. He wakes up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. He has to go to the outhouse. So he leaves the palace to go outside. He does what he needs to do, and he comes back, and it's pitch black. And the guards say, "Who is that?" And he says, "What do you mean? It's Belshazzar." They say, no. There's no one allowed to come in. So, no, it's my palace. And following orders, they kill him on the spot. They killed Belshazzar. That's what the king said. You got to kill everyone. They didn't see who he is. They see somebody a little bit of a distance before the days of electricity. There's no lighting outside. And Belshazzar is killed. Okay. Belshazzar's had a daughter named Vashti. Achashverosh marries his daughter. Vashti. This was earlier, maybe, but I'm just giving you the history. Now, fast forward a few decades. Achashverosh throws a party. And they say, why did Achashverosh throw this feast? Because Achashverosh calculated that the 70 years are up now. The mistake that his father-in-law had made, now already years later, now, according to his calculation, the 70 years have passed, and therefore it's time to celebrate. That's why he made this big party in Shushan and invites everybody. What did he do? He wore the high priest's garments. And he said to bring out all of the temple's vessels and everything. So now you imagine for a moment, does a Jew belong at such a party? If a Jew is coming to such a party to celebrate in such a type of a feast, that's like the biggest slap in the face to being Jewish. That's the biggest embarrassment. The man is throwing a party celebrating the fact that the temple was destroyed, wearing the priestly garments, serving out of the temple's vessels, and you are not embarrassed to be here right now? That's the way they explain what was the sin of the Jewish people. That the Jewish people, it's like, again, it's hard for us to imagine such an idea. That Jews went to a feast that was celebrating our own defeat, our own destruction, the fact that we don't have a temple. And now we're going to celebrate the fact that we're in exile. This was unforgivable in the eyes of God. Such a celebration is unforgivable. So therefore, they want to say that this is the explanation. This is what the students of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai are offering. That's the logic. That's the wisdom behind why it was so bad. What was so bad about this meal? It could have been you ate kosher food. We don't care what type of food you ate. That wasn't the issue that we're discussing over here. Now, this is a good possible explanation. The only problem with this explanation is that the only problem with this explanation is, why is everyone responsible that wasn't there? The people that weren't there, it seems to be like a collective punishment for everybody. The women and the children especially, they weren't participating in this thing. So to find the men that were there in Shushan, they went. But you have 126 other provinces and states that people didn't participate. Plus you have the women and children who didn't participate. So why is it that they're included in the punishment? And this is what Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai responds to his students. He said, well, that would only explain why the people in the capital were punished. But what about everyone, all the Jews living outside? Why were they caught up in this extermination of Haman? So the Rebbe offered a very beautiful insight over here. To help us understand this piece of the Talmud, and also to understand, as I said, give us an insight into the Jewish reality and the Jewish existence. And that's as follows. I guess the best way to explain it is like this. Up until now, we're understanding the question as a form of punishment. They did something wrong. The Jews must have done something wrong. What did they do wrong that would equal such a harsh punishment from God? That's the way we usually think about these questions. This is a terrible thing that happened. There must be a punishment from God. Why would God punish the people in such and such a manner? If someone, God forbid, has spoiled food, eat spoiled food, or someone tells you, don't eat the food that's spoiled. Why is it telling you not to eat the spoiled food? Why do you tell your child don't eat the spoiled food? They want it. I want this. But it's spoiled. So what are you going to say? Oh, it's going to make you sick. So if you get sick, if you get a bellyache from the spoiled food, is that a punishment for eating it? That's just a result of eating it. Not everything bad that happens is a punishment. Sometimes it's just the result of doing something that you shouldn't have done. In other words, if you eat spoiled food, the result of that is going to be you're going to feel sick. So don't eat it. If you take poison, you're going to have a terrible reaction to that. Don't do it. No, the doctor doesn't punish you when you take something, when you eat poisonous, and then you have a serious reaction to it. It's not a punishment from the medical field. That's a result of nature. That this is just what's going to happen. 1 + 1 = 2. So this is another perspective in life. When you see things that aren't going well, things that are troubling, things that we question, why is this person sick? What do they deserve? Well, I'm not asking like the general philosophical question for life, but maybe because they ate something that wasn't healthy. You know, maybe if you would be more careful about your diet, you would be more healthy. It's not a punishment from God. It's just lousy eating habits. Don't blame God for everything. Use this now as a backdrop to the following idea. Our rabbis give an analogy for the Jewish people and our existence. And they compare the Jewish people to a kifsa achas, to a lonely sheep, to a one and only sheep, who stands in between 70 wolves. The Jewish people are surrounded by 70 wolves. What are the chances for this sheep to survive an encounter with 70 wolves? What are the odds? It's not a trick question. Huh?
None.
None. Zero. Very low. It would take a miracle for it to survive. But in the rules of nature, it's not going to make it. So how do the Jewish people survive? Says the Talmud, the answer is we have a shepherd. We have a great shepherd. That's God. Shematzilo v'shoimra, that protects it and watches and guards it. So as long as there's a shepherd there, standing next to the sheep, so it can shoo away the wolves. It can protect this little vulnerable sheep. So we are reliant on the shepherd. This is the fact. This is the way nature has it for the Jewish people. We are a minority among the nations of the world. They will always gang up against us. That's just natural. So how are we going to survive? We're going to survive because we have a shepherd standing next to us to protect us. It's the shepherd's job. That's what the shepherd gets paid for, to take care of the sheep. That's God's business, how he's going to do it. But God is going to protect us. In other words, what we're really saying over here is that the natural existence of the Jewish people is actually supernatural. Our baseline, we start from a place where we are reliant on a supernatural power, a godly power to protect us. Absent that, our default position is we're a sheep among 70 wolves, we stand no chance. This is the way the Talmud gives us an analogy. Our rabbis give us this analogy to explain how we are around, how we make it in life. So now, how does this protection work? How does God's protection work for the Jewish people? As long as we are open to it, as long as we want it, as long as we are reliant on it, so God says it's here for you. If you decide that you want to run away from it, you want to shut it down, that's up to you too. In other words, God doesn't force anything. The shepherd doesn't force his protection. If the sheep is silly enough to go at it on his own, so then you're going to go at it on your own. In the Megillah story, the words to choose that the students of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai chose carefully was they took pleasure in the feast of Achashverosh, which means like this. Their problem wasn't that they went. That wasn't the issue over here. The issue is how they felt about going. We don't need to come on to, it was a party with the temple, let's go with a regular party. They're invited to a party. The Jewish people now think what? Achashverosh invited the Jewish people and he served us kosher food. How do the Jews feel now? How do you imagine how the Jews would feel? Imagine President Biden would invite all Jews from all over the world. We're going to have, he maybe can't fit everyone. I'll call all the rabbis from across the world, across America. Every rabbi is invited. We'll have 10,000 people at some center, and he's going to serve food, and he's going to give us kosher food. What do you think? How do you think the Jewish community would react to such an invitation? We'd be like, "Wow, we're really part of the special people. We're really in this White House. The Jews are connected. We finally made it. We finally got these connections over here, and we would, in other words, we would think, and this is what the mistake that the Jews made then, that our existence is solidified in the fact that we're fully ingrained into the political higher upper echelons in the government. We have nothing to worry about. There's nothing to worry about because what do you mean? We're us and Achashverosh, kosher food, which whoever thought of such a thing? 70 years earlier, his grandfather went and destroyed the temple. Now his grandson is giving his granddaughter's husband is giving kosher, inviting the Jews and giving kosher food. This is like the Mashiach came, the Messiah came, and we're great. Who needs God? We're good. God, we're good. We appreciate you for all your help that you gave us up until now. We don't take it lightly, but at this point, we got it. We made the connections that we need. We can cruise naturally. And that was expressed in the pleasure of the party. They didn't go there reluctantly. They didn't go there saying that we don't belong here. This is not a place for a Jew. It's not our business. This is not the type of party that we're looking for. This is the way you guys party. Enjoy your party. We don't need this. We much prefer, being at home with our families. We much prefer studying. We much prefer doing other things. Partying with the fellow non-Jewish elite is not what we need in life. Maybe we would go because it's the appropriate thing to do. The king invites you. You got to go to a party. You can't say no. But we would be the first second we could get out of there. We try to get out of there. That would be the idea. I have to go. It's like you got any event you go to that you don't want to go to. People have work events all the time. I have a work dinner I have to go to. It's a pain. My wife needs me home. My kids need me home. I have to go. I can't not show up. So you go there, and the first second you can bolt. You're out. You get home, and I got here as soon as possible, right? That's one type of feast, one type of party you go to. Another type of party you go to, you're enjoying it. You're having a good time. So you text the babysitter, I'll be home an hour later than I told you because this is going really well. The Jews, it's fantastic for us. We don't need it. We're not reliant anymore on any supernatural power. Said the students at the moment they said that. So they opened themselves up, not as a punishment, but as a consequence of their behavior. You told your shepherd, we don't need you anymore. So God said, no problem. So I walk away. What happens next? It's not a punishment from God that that the non-Jews want to kill you. It's natural. Right now, they were busy with their party. Tomorrow morning, when I'm not there and the wolf wakes up, he's going to attack. And that's what happened. So what did the Jews have to do? How did we get back? We call our shepherd back when we need now. Oh, then now we're in trouble. Now a decree goes out saying that the Jewish people are free targets to kill. Easy prey. Imagine. Imagine in America there came a law came down in New York State that on December 15th of 2024, God forbid, anyone can go to a Jewish home and steal whatever you want, and you won't be prosecuted. Imagine from now till December, what do you think the Jews are going to do? We're going to go nuts. Oh, I'm sorry, the law passed. We can't do anything about it. This is the law. So, okay, let me go run to a different state. Well, you know what? In that state, the same. What are you going to do now? There's nowhere to run. Take my stuff and go where? That's what happened. Now, I only give you the analogy when it comes to money, material objects. Imagine they say life. Oh, let me run. Run where? There's nowhere to go. We're not putting you in a camp. We're not putting you in a concentration camp. We don't want you to work for us. We don't want you to be our slaves. We want nothing from you. We want to kill you and take all your possessions. We can't even imagine. You can't even imagine such a scenario. But this was the result of the Jewish people's pleasure in feeling like we belong. We've made it. Oh, we finally made it. Comes in Mordechai. Mordechai realizes this is disaster. The Jews realize this is disaster. Mordechai is the leader. Mordechai goes out and he puts on sackcloth and he begins to gather the Jews. Esther is freaked out. She's here. She has no idea what's happening. So she says, Mordechai, change your clothes. He says, what are you doing? He says, no. Go tell Esther the Jewish people are in trouble. And she should go to the king, her husband, and tell her that her people are in trouble. So Esther hesitates. Esther says, what do you mean? You know, there's a rule that if you go to the king uninvited, even the queen, if you go without an invitation to the king's room, to the king's chambers, can kill you. The only exception to the rule is he had a golden scepter that if he saw you and he was in a good mood, so he can extend his golden scepter to you. That was like an invitation. Okay, yes, you can come in. But if he doesn't do that, it's 50-50 at best. 50% chance the guy's going to kill me. And it's not like he never killed his wife before, because 9 years earlier he killed Vashti. That's why he married me, because he decided in his craziness to kill his first wife. So I should go to the palace uninvited. The guy's going to kill me. He's a madman. Everyone knew Achashverosh was a nut. He was a madman, like Napoleon. These people, they're crazy. So Mordechai replies and says, "This is your job now. You don't want to do it. God will find. The Jewish people will find salvation from somewhere else. It won't come through you, but you will forever go down in history as that person who didn't help. You'll be lost in history forever." Esther realizes the seriousness of the moment, and she says, "Okay, I'm going to go. Well, this is what I want you to do. Gather all the Jews and fast for 3 days. Men, women, and children. Everybody fast for 3 days. And I and my maidservants are also going to fast for 3 days. And at the end of the 3 days, I'm going to go to the king, and hopefully he'll like what he sees and he'll take me in. And then I'll already work him to figure out how to deal with the situation." So now, let's stop for a moment. Stop for a moment. Try to understand, what did Esther just say? Esther has one goal. Her goal is that when Achashverosh looks at her and sees her, he's going to want her. And he'll say, "Come inside." That's the only goal that she has over here. So any normal person in her situation would spend 3 days trying to look her best. So that in the moment of truth, Achashverosh will be wowed by her, even though she's coming uninvited, but he'll overlook that and welcome her in. That's what any normal person would do. Not only does Esther not do that, but she does the exact opposite of that. Everyone knows you fast. At the end of a fast day, you're not going to look your best. You look tired and you look hungry, and no one's interested in being around you. And people around you can tell. Imagine doing that for 3 days. What's the game plan over here? What's Esther thinking? And Mordechai is like supportive. It's a great idea. Esther, fantastic idea. That's a terrible idea. Esther, go eat a great meal 3 days. Prepare yourself. Go to the king and take care of business. Mordechai and the Jews, they're great idea. Why is it such a good idea? Because if you think about it, this is exactly the antidote to the problem. It's the medicine to our upset stomach that came not as a punishment, but as a result of eating the spoiled food. We were a sheep with a protector. We walked away from the protector and we said, basically, we're good on our own. And all of a sudden, we were faced with 70 wolves staring us down. What do we do now? Esther says, of course, I have to go to the king. We can't just expect to do nothing and God is going to protect us. We have to do something. But the act that I'm going to do, whatever act it is that I'm going to do, has to be an act that expresses, that holds within it the notion of I'm really relying on God to take care of this. It's not about me, it's all about God. I'm just a little pawn that's moving around. Hopefully it's going to work. But the only way it's going to work is if God makes it work. Without God's blessing for this, I'm toast. That's why Esther doesn't prepare herself. She doesn't go into it to follow the logic of the Jewish people of that time, which was, we're so good because we have one of us in the White House. One of our own is the king's wife. What can go possibly wrong with that? Oh, just call up Esther and tell her, there's a problem for the Jews, go take care of the problem. That would just feed in and make the problem worse. She realizes that. That's why she says, I'm going to go to the king, but I'm going to first fast for 3 days. I'm going to dedicate myself to God, prepare myself spiritually. After I prepare myself spiritually, I will have opened up myself to be a container to hold God's blessing. Then I'll walk to Achashverosh. Then how Achashverosh reacts to me is already out of my control. That's already something which I cannot dictate. That's already my protector is going to have to be there to protect me. That's already where I'm relying on the supernatural to be able to turn Achashverosh's mind and heart into being interested into Esther and whatever Esther came for, because he has no idea. He didn't know Esther was Jewish. He had no idea why Esther was walking in. He was completely in the dark to it. So the whole story of Purim, how we got into the problem and how we exited the problem, all has to do with this relationship between God, the Jewish people, and the rest of the world. Tomorrow is a Jewish fast called the Fast of Esther, separate from the fast that we're talking about now. What's the idea of a fast day in general? The idea of a fast day for the Jewish, from a Jewish perspective, the idea of a fast day was where we spend our time, more time of that day focused on prayer and turning to God. We express our reliance on Almighty God. And that's why we fast. That's why we say extra prayers on a fast day. So why is a fast called the Fast of Esther? Because on the day of proposed extermination of the Jewish people, when the Jewish people were not permitted, were originally the day that we were supposed to be killed, but then they said that we can defend ourselves. On the 13th day of Adar, the Jews had to go to fight. So the way traditionally it worked was all those men who go to battle, they have to eat a good meal and you got to be strong. Everybody else, all the other men, women, and children who stayed home during a time of war, they would fast to beseech God, to pray on behalf of the soldiers, the warriors who were fighting, that they should come home safely. That's the way it usually worked. In this particular case, there was an exception to the rule. What was the exception? The exception was who were the soldiers? The soldiers were everybody, because everybody was a target. It wasn't traditional warfare over here. Women and children also had to defend themselves. They also had a target on their back. So everybody, every single Jew, there could be no one fasting. Everyone had to eat, everyone had to be strong, just in case they would have to defend themselves on the streets. The only one who had no problem, the only one who could fast was Esther, because she was safe. She wasn't troubled. She didn't think that anyone's going to harm her. She was protected. So Esther was the only Jew that actually fasted on this fast day. That's why it's called the fast of Esther. She was the only Jew who fasted on this day. So we commemorate this fast by a fast called the fast of Esther. So what's the idea of this concept? Jews are going out. We have to put in our efforts. We have to fight. We have to defend ourselves. No one is saying that we shouldn't have an army. We shouldn't defend ourselves. We should just allow the enemy to come attack us, and we'll sit in shul with a book of Psalms praying to God, and God's going to send some miraculous angel to smite down our enemy. That's not what we're suggesting over here. But what we are suggesting is we have to recognize and consciously be aware of where our protection comes from. Is our protection in the bullet? Is our protection from the Iron Dome? Is our protection from sophisticated intelligence? Or is our protection from God? The moment we feel that our protection comes from natural means, we've fallen back into the pre-Purim mentality, the pre-miracle of Purim mentality, I say. That was the way we thought when we went to the feast of Achashverosh, where we thought that we have the political connections. We thought we have everything that we need. Nothing can possibly go wrong for the Jewish people. And we see this today, the same thing. There are Jews who believe, maybe they believed till October 6th, I don't know. But they're like, at least in America, we're protected. And in Israel, certainly they believe, for the most part, we're protected. You'll always have an isolated incident here or there, but no one imagined in 2023 that there'll be an attack where thousands and thousands and thousands of terrorists would come in and just burn down homes and take over villages. No one ever imagined. This was something from 70 years ago. Impossible could happen today. We're too strong. Our defense, our intelligence, it's just too good for anything like this to ever happen. In America, we're safe. We have the protection. There's so many laws in place. Everyone is good. And you see in 1 second how it all changes. A wall gets broken. The people come in. In America, Jews have never felt less safe. Since then, anti-Semitism all of a sudden became like it's normal. It's permitted today to be an anti-Semite. It's permitted today to be a hater of the Jewish people. So what's the response? Our response has to be, we have to recognize, we have to do the things that are expected of us. Legally, we have to follow the things. Defense, we have to have a good defense. The best, not only good. Everything has to be the best. We have to remember, we're reliant on God. I was speaking to a prominent rabbi from the city a couple of weeks ago. Rabbi for one of the largest synagogues in Manhattan. We are at a wedding together. We're sitting next to each other, so I'm talking to them. So we're talking about this idea of anti-Semitism, the rise of anti-Semitism in America, in New York. He's not a Hasidic rabbi. The people that his congregants don't necessarily look Jewish on the street. It's difficult, to know if they're a Jew or they aren't a Jew. So we're talking how it's very interesting. Think about this for a moment. The community that's been attacked with the most anti-Semitic attacks in New York are the Jews that look the most Jewish. The ones that walk with a hat, with a beard, with payas, the more Jewish you look, they're the ones that are being attacked more than the random person who doesn't look Jewish, who doesn't have a yarmulke, who doesn't have a beard, and they can pass that as a non-Jew in theory. So you would think who should be the most nervous people? Who should be the most scared? Which community should be the most scared from anybody? It should be the more religious, the outwardly religious you look, the more scared you should be. When in the reality is, it's just the opposite. You go to Borough Park, to Williamsburg, to Flatbush, to Crown Heights, to the what the world would call the ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods, and they're the least afraid of anti-Semitism. The least. You go to Windsor Terrace and Park Slope and Manhattan, and Jews that don't even look Jewish on the street, they're much more fearful of anti-Semitism. Much more. But they're not even, they're if ever, attacked. Why? How is this? How does this make sense? Jews called me. Maybe they were smart enough not to call me, but I heard when in talking, they didn't ask me this question, but they commented they were taking down the mezuzah from the front door, putting it on the inside of the house, or taking it down completely on October 8th and 9th. They became afraid. Oh, I don't know. The neighbors, they see the mezuzah. I don't know. Everyone another reason in their brain for what's going to happen. No Jew in Borough Park took down the mezuzah. No Jew in Williamsburg took down. No Jew in Crown Heights took down the mezuzah. On the contrary, nice the biggest mezuzahs you're going to find are in these neighborhoods. No problem. I'm not afraid. What do you mean you're not afraid? But anti-Semitism is on the rise. What's the answer? Why? So I'm speaking to this rabbi. Why is it that they're not afraid? And I think the biggest reason for this is because they're trained, they're taught, they're educated with a certain reliance on God. It's not to say that they're not aware. There's volunteer civil shomrim, the civil guard in the neighborhoods. They're not living in a different reality. They know what's going on. They're pressing the politicians. They're speaking to the police department every day. But we know that that's not the source of our protection. That's just a container that God can use as a means to protect us. But we're reliant on God. How does it make sense in my mind that I should sever my connection with my protector in hopes of being more protected? For the sheep to tell the shepherd, you, the shepherd, are causing the wolves to get a little anxious. So how about you go to a different room for a few days, for a few weeks, and when the wolves are calm, you'll come back and we'll continue the journey. Oh, come back. You'll be bones. It'll be a skeleton. We wouldn't even be able to find the bone of yours. That's what happened. That's what we need. God. We need God. First and foremost, we need God. After we have God, we're going to make the move like Esther. We're going to go to Achashverosh. We're going to walk into his palace. We're going to tell him that we're Jewish. We're going to have a game plan over here. Which, by the way, she didn't come and say, by the way, I'm Jewish. She had a game plan. She had a whole thing. Esther, what do you want? I want to make a meal special for you and Haman. Fantastic meal, lunch. Haman, you're invited to lunch with the king and the queen. That's not what you want. What do you really want? Esther, what do you really want? Tomorrow I want to make another meal for you and Haman. Okay, tomorrow another meal. Tomorrow lunch. Okay, now Esther, what do you want? Now I have a problem. If it was a simple problem, I wouldn't bother you. This is a serious problem. Someone's trying to kill me and my people. Who? Haman. All right, kill Haman. My point is just there was a game plan. She came in, she knew what she was doing, she had an idea of what she wanted to do, and she executed on her plan. Was it such a brilliant plan? Did she go to advisors? and the big the big the people that advise the big corporations and how to deal with with PR and no, because she knew she was reliant on God. My reliance on God is complemented by a game plan of what I'm going to do, action in the real world. That's the secret of the Jewish people and our longevity, our indestructibility, and the fact that we're still here. How many people wanted to destroy us in one shape or form, and they were successful to a small degree. They were able to hurt a number. The number was a smaller number, a larger number. It doesn't take away from the pain that we suffer from it. As Jews, we're the people of pain and endurance. At the same time, we're still here. Even though everyone predicted we wouldn't be here anymore. We're not a normal people. I agree, we're not a normal people. Our existence isn't normal. It's not natural. We shouldn't be here anymore. Just like all of the old nations that were very strong and dominant, like Achashverosh, and his whole empire also fell. All empires fell. There's no remnant. No one walks around today saying, I'm from the original Babylonians. I'm from the original Romans who destroyed the temple. No one says such a thing. The only people that makes it, we're the Jewish people. We're the people that were exiled from our homeland 2,500 years ago when you destroyed our temple, and then 2,000 years ago when you destroyed our second temple. I can tell you exactly where we were for the last 1,000 years. Our family tree to go back all the way back. And every person who walks and says, I'm a Cohen, they know exactly which son of Jacob they come from. They know exactly that their great-great-grandfather was Aaron the high priest. This is unique to the Jewish people. What's the secret sauce? Our reliance on God. So the holiday of Purim is a celebration, which is the most unique celebration, because the non-Jews, the haters, the killers, they wanted to kill our body. They were coming, not our soul. They didn't care about Judaism. They did care about Judaism, but they were coming after to kill us physically. They wanted to physically kill us. How do we celebrate Purim? We celebrate Purim with this unique idea and holiday of a feast. Well, every Shabbos and holiday we have a meal, a festive meal. But this meal is unique. Why? Because we're supposed to drink more alcohol than any other. It's like a mitzvah. We have a mitzvah to drink on Purim. It's a mitzvah to celebrate. It's a mitzvah to have good food on Purim more than any other day of the year. There's a special meal on Purim called a feast of Purim, where you have to have a lot of food and you have to have a lot of drink. Physical indulgence. Physical indulgence. Right? But at the core, what are we really celebrating? We're really celebrating the fact that we have a shepherd who protects us. Our physical existence that we're indulging in right now, that we're enjoying right now, is the fact that we have a protector. Hanukkah is different. To compare, Hanukkah is a holiday of lighting lights, oil and flame. These are spiritual things. The whole holiday is all about the spiritual side of life. But this Purim is a very, very material holiday, and it's supposed to be that way. But it's unique, because at the core of this great celebration is the fact that we're actually celebrating a miracle of God coming back to the Jewish people to be our protector. That came about in a way through Esther, who did things which were unconventional and logically they were illogical. They were illogical, but it was also irrelevant, because that's how the blessing of God came down. So this gives us a little bit of perspective for the past, but it also helps us understand for the future where we are today. It's more relevant today because of what happened just a few months ago in Israel and where the world is today in terms of our relationship with the non-Jews. People understand. In the United Nations, anytime something comes about Israel, it's like the easiest thing in the world. There's like an automatic supermajority that's going to vote again. It's built into the system. It's built in. This is the way it is. There's going to be 70 wolves around us, and we're one. We're a fraction of the people. So we take the minimum steps necessary. We take the steps necessary, but we don't indulge. We don't take pleasure in the fact that we're doing these things. We don't take pleasure in the fact that we have to go to Achashverosh. We don't take pleasure in the fact that we need to come on to a president, to a politician, to a police, to ask them for help. We do that because naturally that's the vehicle that we're using. Our pleasure is in the fact that we have a God who watches over us, who protects us, who we know is there for us in times of need. And this is the combination of Esther, and this is the combination how we have to take it further, all the way until this very present day. Anyone have any questions? Any questions from online? Shalom, how are you?